Thank you, everybody, for joining today for our EPMware product update webinar. On today's session, we're going to go and discuss the very long-awaited OneStream Adapter. We are super excited on our side to roll this one out. It's been in the works for almost over a year. And the team, the development team on our side has worked super hard to get this going and to roll it out. So thank you, everyone who's joining us today. Just to get started, give you a quick overview for those of you who don't know us. We are EPMware. We are a software company. We're headquartered in Silicon Valley. Got presence out in New York City, also in Mumbai. And EPMware is a master data governance software offering. It's available on-premise and as an AWS SaaS offering. We also offer consulting. We also work with a number of different consulting partners. And of course, training support services is available, also available on keyteach.com through a really amazing training class. And what we're going to do today is walk through EPMware and the OneStream Adapter. On the phone today, I've got Dave Collins from, I'm going to jump over one slide, Dave Collins from OneStream Software. And Dave, I'll let you go ahead and do a quick intro.
Thanks, Abby. Dave Collins here, Director of Solutions Consulting at OneStream. I'm actually part of the pre-sales organization, which is part of the sales organization, but I service the partner alliance team globally. So I work with great partners like EPMware, some of the deployment partners. I see some partners, Finit, for example, on the line, and a number of others. My sole focus is the partnership and supporting you all from a messaging, from a technical selling perspective. So I'm glad to be here to talk about OneStream.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. I'm going to just jump back one slide. So for those of you who don't have not experienced OneStream yet, Dave, I'll let you just kind of go through this slide.
Sounds good. So OneStream is a software company that specializes on performance management. Notice I didn't say corporate or business or financial or enterprise. Depending on who I'm speaking with, I tend to just go with performance management. And we'll talk more about that a bit later. If you're not familiar with it, we have some slides at the end if we have some time. We are focused on 100% customer success. We actually have lineage with Hyperion and Oracle, and actually all the way back to a company called Upstream. When Bob Powers and Tom Shea created OneStream, they decided to focus on the customer first and foremost. So the metric that we key in on is 100% customer success. We strive to make sure that the customers are referenceable if they wish to be. We have done so over the last decade plus by converting a number of solutions that were in the legacy Oracle, SAP, or IBM, part of that 2007 consolidation of EPM going up into the ERP vendors. We've done so by converting a number of them at different points along the way to OneStream. We have now more than 750 customers. In fact, we're pretty close to 800 now, but the official number that marketing gives us is 750. And we have a marketplace of solutions where we have 50 solutions that allow you to enhance your OneStream implementation, one of which we'll talk about today, Application Control Manager, which was an acquisition that OneStream made from Finit not all that long ago. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Abhi, and I'll be back with you in a few slides.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. It's really amazing journey, just kind of watching, what's been happening in this industry and having it progress. And really it's create an entry point for us as well. So folks, if you don't know me yet, my name is Abhi Narakar. I'm one of the co-founder and managing directors of EPMware. And, our lineage kind of follows the same track where, originally we were in Hyperion, ERP spaces, and we've worked very heavily with Oracle Hyperion applications in the past. And so, we're really excited to see where OneStream has come after just a few short years. And again, happy to talk about our partnership and how the OneStream Adapter is going to, make life a lot better for OneStream customers and users generally. So in today's webinar, what we want to do is give you guys a little overview of EPMware, exactly what it is, how it works, and with a real heavy focus on the OneStream Adapter, how it works, how OneStream metadata is managed in EPMware. And at the same time, we also want to discuss how customers are using ACM as well as EPMware, and in some cases together. So feel free to kind of ask questions. We'll try to get to everything. There's a question button down at the bottom in Zoom. And David, you could help me field some questions along the way. That would be awesome. And folks, just kind of keep pestering me across as we go through this conversation. So really, the focus of today's conversation really is having accessible, accurate, and trustworthy metadata. And for EPMware, we've strived to make life easier for management of metadata as it spans multiple different applications. What we've seen in the past is that metadata has traditionally been a very a technical task to manage, and the result of having inaccessible, inaccurate, and untrustworthy metadata in disparate application yields to financial results in these applications that's just purely wrong or different, and causes a ton of time to be lost when managing this metadata, or even trying to report accurate results. So what EPMware allows you to do is really capture metadata at the source and put validations and governance around that to make that metadata, again, accessible, accurate, and trustworthy. So kind of life prior to EPMware, as some of you may have been experienced, is metadata starts off as a end user request. It kind of makes its way over to administrators, to managers, and folks will continue to kind of enrich this along the way before it finally gets over into target applications. Now, once it finally gets to those target applications, and many times we're just crossing our fingers and saying, all right, well, I hope it got there okay. I hope the member that's been added to OneStream it has properly been added to SAP and Salesforce, or whatever the downstream application is. And at the same time, we're hoping that the description is aligned across these applications as well. And if it's not, then sometimes we just don't find out until that report is run in that target application. So what we're trying to do at EPMware really is create a central repository of master data. And EPMware really is designed for that business user to create a transfer of ownership and allow that user to facilitate change while still managing a master data process across performance management applications, across ERP, and across data warehouse. All right, so at the end of the day, we become the source of truth for enterprise metadata management. So to give you a quick overview of how EPMware sits in a typical architecture, a lot of folks will use this as the central hub and spoke for metadata management, which means that we will load EPMware with all of the relevant hierarchies, and will allow users to log into EPMware and to create a request for change. So they'll actually be authoring change. This is for financial application metadata, non-financial application metadata. Sometimes we call it, reference metadata as well. So EPMware has the capability of holding all types of metadata, regardless of what type of metadata it is. Now, this metadata can be submitted directly into EPMware. We also have a case where there is metadata that's loaded from an inbound data source. And that's because that at that point in time may be the source of metadata change. Typically, it's chart of account segments coming from something like, maybe like a Dynamics 365, SAP, interface tables or flat files that just might be feeding in dimensionality. Give you a specific example, maybe like a workday hierarchy that has like an employee dimension that needs to be fed into EPMware. And so what EPMware does is it'll consume that metadata change as it's added from end users or from inbound sources, and will properly reflect that change across the realm of applications that are going to consume that. So it really is a central repository and a catalog of all metadata that needs to deploy or needs to be subscribed to from downstream applications. Now, EPMware will show you exactly what that metadata is going to look like in that downstream application. It will also validate and govern all of those changes for those downstream applications in real time. So as the user's creating that change, it will automatically validate that the member name looks okay, it has the right number of characters, the description is aligned. If a metadata member is created in SAP, it properly is added to the right dimensions in OneStream or in Salesforce or any other downstream data warehouse application that it needs to be fed to. So those governance rules are really technical and also functional in nature as they're pushed to downstream applications. Now, here, for example, I see OneStream, but we also have Application Control Manager as one of the targets, and that's part of the conversation that we'll discuss today. But one of the big differences that we show here is that EPMware is able to directly deploy to these target applications. Now, this is super important because a lot of these applications that we're pushing metadata to, where EPMware has developed a custom integration, we handle those nuances of managing that financial application. And so the integration with EPMware to any of the targets that we support really is a plug and play option. So on day one of using EPMware, you're able to import your hierarchies. So with OneStream, for example, you can grab your XML, load it into EPMware, probably about 7 to 10 minute process. And then once you've created change, you're able to simply press the deploy button, and EPMware will push that metadata directly to the target application, and then we'll wait for successful deployment confirmation from that application. So all in all, whether the metadata is coming from an inbound source or whether it's coming from an end user who's authoring that change, there is a closed loop of metadata, how it's consumed, how it's enriched, and then when is it successfully consumed by the target application. So as far as target adapters go, today, of course, we're going to focus on OneStream, but we do have a number of other applications that we support. We're continuously adding support for other financial and non-financial applications, as we go through very many implementations. And, we always challenge our customers to come back to us and mention that, they see a need for metadata management, and they see a need for tighter integration with a target application. And that's where, we'll kind of take the shift from deploying metadata to something like an interface and table and a flat file, and we'll actually support that outbound integration. So a lot of the adapters that we've developed really have been the result of implementations that we've done with customers and the expansion of the EPMware landscape out from just performance management, going out into the ERP and out to other data warehouse applications. So Few EPMware customers that we've worked with, a lot of folks have, come to us with older Hyperion applications like DRM or EDMCS, and they've gone to EPMware to get a little bit more feature set, some more functionality. Kind of the same thing for OneStream as well, to get a little bit more alignment between the variety of different applications within the suite of applications that they're managing. So real quick, again, to summarize high level, with EPMware, we're creating a master data repository for applications to gain the visibility of what a request is and how that change is going to impact all downstream target applications. One additional feature that we'll talk about and we'll show you is EPMware, along with its governance process, is able to also push metadata to multiple different environments. And that's actually been pretty popular with a lot of our customers, to be able to say, all right, create a change. I want to be able to push this change to a test environment. And then I want to be able to push this change to a production environment for a series of applications. And then, of course, EPMware does give you the ability to access, cleanse, enrich, and report on all metadata changes while you're maintaining this historical versioning. Now, at the same time, we do want to also reflect on the account application control manager and the features over here as well. So Dave, I'll pass it over to you to talk a little bit about how ACM started and what you guys really use it for.
So I mentioned earlier that ACM, which is now in our marketplace of solutions, was an acquisition that we made from Finit. It was the old Request It application that Finit had. It's a great tool for plugging directly into the workflow, and I'll show you some of that when we get to demonstrating in a bit. If I look at what Abhi talked about with regard to EPMware features, I think the key thing for me is EPMware provides the master data repository, and ACM provides us with the ability to plug it into the OneStream workflow. So can I actually go directly back to a GL, a data warehouse, other MDM tools like EPMware? Absolutely, and we've done that. In some cases, I know ACM or Request It was used to connect to Oracle's DRM solution, as an example, and provide a transition from an Oracle EPM product into OneStream. So you can do things along those lines. You can use EPMware actually to reach into some of its other accessible solutions like an Anaplan or an SAP solution, and then bring that content into OneStream as a bridge. But I think the big important factor here is that, and you'll see this in the demo, EPMware provides that library, it provides the repository, and ACM is going to provide the ability to plug it into the workflow. Now, I'm greatly diminishing what both of the tools do, and you'll actually see some of that when we get to the demonstration. But I think, if you look at that third bullet point on screen, utilize multi-level approval workflow for change requests. I'm going to show that. So there'll be a handoff between Abhi and I where Abhi pushes some information directly into ACM, and then I'll act as a business unit controller. I'll review, I'll push it then up to my corporate controller, who will review and enrich, and then push it on to the administrator, who's going to go ahead and approve the change. The other aspect of ACM, though I have great audit capability inside of EPMware, I have audit capability inside of OneStream on an overall basis, and this tucks in all of that metadata change as well. And then last but not least, I can export some of the metadata changes back to the source systems. Or if I'm using EPMware, I can utilize that capability within it. Abhi?
Great. Thanks, Dave. So just a quick kind of compare of functionality. We don't need to spend time, kind of going through each and every single one of these, but it kind of gives you a good way to understand how folks are using EPMware, how folks are using ACM. And just like Dave said, we can use them together. There are specific use cases where we may need something like EPMware to give us incremental changes out of the source systems and then feed those over to ACM. You may want EPMware to be able to validate and govern changes across a variety of different applications and then feed those over to OneStream or even to ACM. So really what we like to do is just kind of evaluate the requirements of how this process should work. And it really kind of goes back to understanding where a customer is with their MDM process and how evolved are they with governance and workflow. And we kind of let the requirements speak for themselves. But, part of our relationship is to, number one, educate the customer base out there and our partners and our consulting partners out there about the very many different options and how these products are used, how they're used separately, and how they're used together. So again, we're kind of just touching the surface of this, but I think it's a good idea to just kind of jump into the product demo and give you guys a better visual of it. So let's just jump right into the EPMware application. And today what we're going to do here is I'll walk you through the overview of what an EPMware application looks like and putting a password at the same time. I'll give you an overview of what the EPMware application looks like and exactly how we're managing metadata. And let's just jump over to a pretty good request. There we go. Cool. So we're looking at the EPMware dashboard. And in the EPMware dashboard on the left, we see our sidebar, and we're going to see the variety of different modules that are available. Here, as soon as I log in as a user, I see the variety of different requests that have been created. Here, I can also see a workflow of stages that a request will go through. Now, again, going back, you can use the workflow process in EPMware to enrich changes, to govern changes. You can offload that into OneStream and push that into OneStream for further enrichment and further governance and workflow. And again, this is where, a good conversation about where this process needs to happen, what type of users need to create change in EPMware, what type of users need to enrich change in OneStream or in ACM. That'll help us kind of drive the best combination of solutions here. But here, EPMware does keep a real-time view of metadata changes to target applications and how it's moving through the process. Here in our stages of workflow, here you can see that we're first deploying to a UAT, then we're going through an approve stage, and then we're finally going through a deploy to production. So what EPMware will do is it'll capture all the changes, it'll push it over to UAT, and then it'll push those exact same changes after approval over to a deployment in prod. Now, we only see three stages over here, but you can layer in any other review and approval stages as well. So if you have multiple applications in EPMware, you will see multiple applications listed here, and they'll be able to reflect the full change to the target application. So on the left, we'll start with our Explorer. And when an application is originally loaded into EPMware, we're going to see it here in our Metadata Explorer. So this is that 5 to 10 minute process that we talked about before will simply allow us to get that application in. And now if we go over to one of our dimensions here, I can click into this and I can browse and I can see my hierarchy. Now this is only a read-only view of this metadata. So what this does is it shows me visually what my hierarchy looks like. It shows me any in-flight changes as well that are occurring in my application. So here I can see there are members highlighted in red. If these are members that have some active change that has not deployed to any of my target applications yet. When EPMware pushes that request out to the target application and gets successful confirmation, EPMware is going to come back and it's going to change this member into gray. And so what that allows us to do is really reflect that there are a combination of active moving requests to either add new members, create a reorg, delete members, copy members from one application to another, whatever the change is. But it shows us that somebody's actively working on that. And now here I can right click, I can click on the history, and this will tell me which request in EPMware is holding that change. So now I'm free to either reach out to that user and say, you know, this change is correct or it's not correct, or I need you to add something to this request as it moves forward through the EPMware workflow. Now over on the right, we see the support for all of our properties in EPMware. So again, with a supported application for EPMware, you're going to see this property set managed exactly how you manage it in your downstream OneStream application. So that means that you're going to be able to manage your vary by cube type, vary by scenario type, vary by scenario type and time. All of the default options and properties that are managed here are also managed exactly the same in OneStream. So the look and feel of it is easy to transition to. So if you're used to making changes and seeing the default options here, you can easily do that. Now, again, we can always create a custom category to be able to give us that tailored view. So if you have an end user that's logging in and creating change here, we typically will just create another category and expose maybe some really, really simple properties like member name, default parent, or any custom business questions, and layer those properties over here and hide some of the technical properties in another category. So it kind of just makes life a little bit easier for them to create that change without having to worry about populating or having to look at other technical properties that may not make sense to them. But what they do get to see is their hierarchy structure in a way that's really familiar, and it allows them to create change by simply right-clicking and creating transactions on this hierarchy. And we'll show that to you guys right now. So I'm going to go into create requests. I'm going to go into metadata. And now I'm looking at a metadata request screen. So I'm going to go and populate a due date. I'm going to populate a description, and we'll call this, what should we call this? Let's call it new account. We'll call it a new cash account. And so we're going to select a priority, and we're going to give it a workflow. And we'll pick our Gulfstream workflow, hit the save button, and now we're ready to create change. Now in our application structure here, we are managing two different applications. We're managing a EBS ERP application, and we're also managing our Gulfstream application. And what we want to show you is we're going to go into our R12 application, and we're going to go into accounts, and we're going to create a brand new member. So I drill down into my application, into my dimension, and now as I click on a member, I'm able to right click and I'm able to see the variety of different transactions that I can create change on. So here, I'm able to create a brand new member as a child, a sibling. I'm able to insert a member from another application type. I can copy or paste members from within this hierarchy and manage my primary and alternate hierarchies in this application. And so we'll just do that real quick over here. So we're going to add a member as a child, and I'm going to type in the member name. Now, one thing to note here is that as I create this brand new member, EPMware's real-time validation is always looking for events at which it should be managing or governing this change. So it tells us that, okay, a new member was added. I hit OK. And then it stops me right here and it says, all right, well, this member already exists. So this is just a very default, straightforward validation that says that any new member that's already been added, we can't have a duplicate member. And of course, this is just a very, very straightforward change. So I'm going to create a brand new unique member name. And now I can see that that member has been created. Over here on the right, I can see default properties that have been set. And we can always, create derived properties. We can derive them based off of other applications. We can derive them based off of values that we create here in EPMware. But we can see three things have happened. The first thing is that our member was created in this R12 application. And so the second line's also been created. And this is where we've told EPMware that any new change that's been created in my ERP automatically needs to be created in my account dimension in OneStream as well. And if I click on this second line, this is going to drill down into my OneStream application and is going to show me that that member was created also under total cache. On the right, I see that there's a variety of different default properties that have been populated based on what's been set or the behavior of this member as it applies to the account dimension. And so now if I look up at the top, I have a third line that was created as well. And this third line shows us some of the automation that can be done in EPMware as well. So now I click on this member, and this has created an a shared member in my IFRS account structure. So that's also been added to my cache member as well. So this is pretty simple example of how we can manage a member across applications. We can manage the automation of a creation of a member in alternate hierarchies, and is actually a very, very common way for us to start off an implementation, is to understand dimension by dimension. When I create change, what does that change mean to every other subscribing application? So now, as a user, I've created this change, and I now have the ability to simply submit this into the workflow, or I can stop and I can close this down and say, all right, well, I'm going to come back tomorrow and create additional change. But I can go up and down the hierarchy, create change either locally in OneStream that has no impact to anything else, like maybe I need to add some supplemental accounts and they have no mapping anywhere. But our rules say that any change added to R12 needs to be mapped. So that's kind of how that mapping will work. Now, again, I can pass this request over to any of my colleagues. They can also create change over here. And we have a lot of users who use an EPMware request to create an entire, almost like a reorg of changes. So you might have either hundreds or thousands of lines of changes going across applications and dimensions that are centrally captured here. But the real powerful feature here is that you can see the full impact of this change before it ever touches your target application. And it's a great way to allow your end users to kind of take a look at this, understand what that change is going to be from a hierarchy view, so that they can understand what that true impact is going to be to target applications. Right, so I'm just going to pause real quick and just take a look at a question. So we have a question that came in and said, if we have multiple OneStream applications, will this also be added to all the OneStream applications in one go? And that's a great question. The answer is absolutely yes. So you can have multiple different OneStream applications, multiple EBS applications, and EPMware will treat each one independently. You can manage the sharing between just two of those applications separately, or two of the dimensions in there separately. So it really is, it's up to you guys to kind of determine what the requirements are. And then for us to create a an architecture of applications in here and define which ones should be synced or mapped or managed separately, and we can do that. So we've got another question here from Dave. So Dave says, Dave, hey, what's going on? Suppose you've got a customer who requires a password change every 90 days. How would EPMware and OneStream stay in sync, or do they both systems need to be updated independently? Good question. So I believe we've got an enhancement in line to kind of work with a password rotation. So that way a password that's updated in EPMware will automatically be updated by that password rotation software. And Dave, I'd love to kind of get into this. So if you've got a requirement that we can just kind of flush out, that is the requirement that I'm talking about has actually come from a customer. But reach out to me and we'll kind of deep dive into that. But we've done a lot of different creative things with kind of keeping that governance in line. Going down to the bottom here, we can see just a series of different changes that have been added to EPMware. And here we can see that EPMware is keeping track of every single change that happens in this request. Now, what it was, what the member was before, what it was changed to, what the property was before, what it was changed to, all of that is very explicitly tracked. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit this into the EPMware workflow, and EPMware is going to run a series of validations just to make sure everything I've done is actually correct. And here now I failed a validation, and it tells me that a account type property was not populated. So we can create a series of different validations and run them at different events within EPMware. So now here I can come in and go, all right, well, I forgot to populate my account type. I can hit save. And then finally, I can resubmit this back into my workflow. And then EPMware kicks this off and notifies the next person in this workflow to come in and either add additional members across the application suite, or it allows them to just simply approve it and move it along to the target application. So now let's go back to the dashboard and we can take a look at 2932. Oops, 2932. Where are you? Here we go. So here we can see that two applications are part of my flow. And so in this example, it's going to a data governance owner, has to go then for alternate hierarchy enrichment. We'll go to a data governance leader. We'll go to UAT. It'll go through approval for UAT. And then finally, it'll go over to production. Again, any of these stages can be kind of moved around. In a case where we're deploying this over to ACM, we would then push these changes through. It would go into an ACM workflow. It will then go to the correct user in the ACM workflow, which will ask for additional enrichment that's related to OneStream. So again, it's up to us to really determine how to leverage the power of EPMware for MDM versus where it makes sense to include workflow based on how the users are using it. Right. So now, one more change that we were going to make before I pass this over to Dave is I was going to create a request and we were going to push that over into an ACM interface table. And if I get this right, I'm going to put this into a deploy only workflow because I want this to move as fast as possible to a target application. Let's go create this change only in OneStream, and let's go into my entity dimension. I believe it's in corp entities, right, Dave?
In the golf balls portion.
So I've looked for the parent member that I want to make that change in. I click on that, hit OK. Europe golf balls. And here we're adding in a member called Eastern Europe. So I'm going to create a brand new member. Hit OK. And then we're going to submit this change. Now, the target of any of our changes can be customized. They can go to directly to the application. They can go to an interface table. They can go to a flat file. Here, we're going to jump over to our deployment, and we're going to take a look at the changes as they're pushed out to the target app. So here, we want to take a look at our deployment. Now, the deployment here, as I said before, connects directly to OneStream, uses a REST API-based connection. And here we can see that 2933 has deployed. It's already been completed. A log gives us a full trail of information of the connectivity between EPMware and the OneStream application. So exactly what happened, what was changed, how did it change? If something failed, what failed? Was it a communication error? Was it a property that should not have been populated? But this is very tightly synced up with the logging that happens in OneStream and returns that result back to EPMware. So here we can see that that successfully completed, and I can just jump into OneStream and we can take a look at our dimensionality. And I didn't deploy that request out there before, but let's go over to Corp Entities. And here we've got Eastern Europe that has been loaded in. And so now, Dave, what I'll do is I'll pass it over to you to give us an overview of how ACM will continue to move this through our workflow process.
Cool, sounds good. And there's a couple of other questions. Why don't you have a look at those while I'm getting my share going here?
Yeah, sure. Let me just refresh that screen.
And confirm for me that you're seeing my desktop with 3 windows and 2 children.
Yeah. So Dave, I see a question from you. Log that you just showed some customers want a summary email showing that error that happened and the failures rather than opening through the log and reading it. Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. All you have to do is just say attach logs when you register a notification in EPMware, and you get the log delivered in your email. So you don't have to log into EPMware to get that information. Way's got a question. If a new member is going into 2 target applications, is it possible to set a property differently depending on which target application it goes into? Absolutely, you can. So you can have those local properties for each application set entirely differently. You can have our description even set differently. You can even have the member name set entirely differently. So EPMware uses a logic builder engine, which allows us to define rules and logic that we apply to the different artifacts in EPMware or different events in EPMware. And as EPMware kind of processes metadata for different application, it uses that custom logic to be able to capture very bespoke details to be able to move that into the target application properly. So Dave, back to you.
Thank you much. So you're seeing my screen right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up where Avi left off. So make some assumptions here that I'm actually running on my instance, truth be told, all cards on the table, as it were. We didn't go so far as to coordinate instances of OneStream and EPMware. What I'm doing here is picking up from a workflow perspective as the controller in Houston. And so I'm actually looking at Task Manager, which is one of the solutions in the marketplace, and that helps me to control my workflow. Right now, I'm looking at all the things that I have to worry about, and there are a number of them. I'm going to focus in on my metadata requests, and this will take me directly to the workflow around either requesting or approving that metadata. I've got some instructions. I've got some other items here that I can do. I'm going to go ahead and click on execute, and I'm now looking at the request that came through from EPMware. So if I look at this in more detail, I'm going to go ahead and manage it. There are two additions. One was Eastern Europe, Bobby showed you that, and then the other addition is Poland. So Poland will wind up being a child beneath Eastern Europe. If I go ahead and click on Eastern Europe, now I'm bringing from EPMware all of these item details. I've got Eastern Europe, I've got my default description. The interesting thing about this is that I don't have as much access to all of the properties, if you will, the attributes here. All of that can be managed within EPMware, or it can be managed, of course, within OneStream. What I'm doing is actually providing a default description. I'm providing the parent member. I'm also providing the reference entity, so properties attributes that will be inherited from that entity. And then I can select the default currency. Now, all of this would have been provided to me by way of EPMware, and I'd really be just confirming here at this point, or perhaps making some modifications to it if that is necessary. As I look at Eastern Europe, which is a child, it actually is including that as a child to the parent that's part of this request. So it's going to create both the parent, Eastern Europe, and the child, Poland. Now, again, workflow. The library of master data would be EPMware. It's passing this information over to me. And now what I'm able to do is advance this through the OneStream workflow. So I'll click on the Advance button. It now pushes this by way of the workflow defined in ACM up to the corporate controller. And if I tried to go back in and manage it, it says, no, you can't do that. You no longer have access. So let me go ahead and minimize this window, and I'll move to my corporate controller. And let me go back home. If I look at all the recent requests, I now have the next step in the process. So I'm going to go ahead and manage this now because it's been pushed up to the corporate controller by way of that advanced stage. I have the ability to not only look at it, but to enrich it. Now, the corporate controller has been given some additional capability to either override settings that were here, or I can actually create some additional content. In this case, text fields around the region and the cost center. I'll go ahead and save that. It does a validation, by the way. There's a validate button there before I save it. And then if I look at Poland, I'm going to do the same thing. Add Europe, add manufacturing. And instead of euro as the currency, I'm actually going to change that to the Polish currency. And go ahead and save that. And when I am finished, I can now advance this through the process. And like before, if I look at all of the requests, I'm now no longer able to manage it because I've pushed it along in the workflow. So again, workflow, leveraging EPMware as the hub of all the master data coming from various systems, whether it be ERP or data warehouse or operational data store or other EPM solutions that perhaps you're converting from and to OneStream. Now I'll go ahead and minimize this. I'm now logged in as the administrator, and I see Europe golf balls. I only have Lyon and Manchester there. If I go to my dashboard for Application Control Manager, let me go ahead and refresh this just in case. And I'm looking at all of the recent. Now, last step in the process that's been defined for this workflow is for the administrator to commit this. Now, the commit button's right here. Before I do that, I'm going to try to manage it, and it says, no, you can't. You don't have the ability to do so. So again, workflow and security built into this in this case, disallowing me to do anything but view it before I go ahead and commit it. Looks very much like the manage phase, but I can't actually make any changes to it. And then down below, I can see all of the activity. So if I go back home and I now go back to all my recents and execute the commit step, once that task completes, I'll go back to my dimension library in OneStream and refresh. And there I have Eastern Europe and Poland. So again, to walk through the workflow here, we started in EPMware. Avi, for his demo, actually added a node. That could have been a node or nodes that came from the underlying source data. It's managed in EPMware. And big value there is it's my hub. I'm pulling content from multiple sources. I'm leveling it. I'm then pushing it along to OneStream directly or to OneStream by way of application control manager, so that the controller, the administrator, whomever within the OneStream user set can take responsibility then to push it on through. All right, let me go ahead and look and see if there are any questions in there relevant to what I've just shown. Doesn't look like it. And go ahead and throw it back to Avi.
Cool, thanks, Dave. I will just grab the screen share. So I realized one thing I forgot to talk about is some of the audit capabilities that are available in EPMware. So I'll just take a minute and just talk through those. And, you know, again, just like Dave said, like understanding the true impact of a change and the catalog of that change is available in EPMware. And again, we try to get as many captures of the result of those changes to all target applications in EPMware, so that there isn't, you know, a tremendous amount of manual transformation that needs to be done from EPMware to get out to a subscribing application. But what EPMware allows you to do and is really capture and give you tools to rationalize and export metadata from our repository for every application that we're holding. So here, an example of some of these reports are, you know, hierarchies. You have the ability to compare applications, compare parent members, export a generation. One of our favorite reports here is getting a hierarchies with properties as of a specific date. So I can say, let me look at my Gulfstream application and we'll take a look at, you know, corp entities, for example, and I want to go back in time and take a look at what my cost center or what my entity hierarchy was on a given date of the history in EPMware. So I can just run this report and get an export as a CSV and HTML. One really cool thing we're doing on our roadmap here is being able to give users an export of this report as a OneStream XML metadata file to be able to then supplement that with a data file and then go back into a historical version of a OneStream application. So, you know, look forward to seeing something like that come out maybe this year. But it's been, you know, pretty popular ask. This report is, you know, one of our favorites, and it gives users a pretty good way to analyze structures historically. So we are kind of coming up with 5 minutes left over here, and I'm going to jump back into our deck. Just wanted to bring up real quick while we take a look at some questions that we will be at Splash. It is EPMware's very first time at Splash, and so we're excited not only to jump on a plane and go to Orlando and hang out and see people face to face, but it'll be really cool to see all of you guys. If you're gonna come down to Splash, come by our booth, say hello, and you know, we're happy to do a detailed demo for you at our booth and kind of show off some really bespoke master data management automation and governance features. So let's take a look at some questions.
And while you're doing that, if you're not currently a OneStream customer and want to know more about OneStream, feel free to reach out to me. The next slide is actually going to show my email address. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. My background is Hyperion and then Oracle. Then I was in consulting for a while. No upsell, no hype, just an educational discussion. If you are interested, I am happy to provide some education on it. I promise not to hand you over to marketing or sales or anything along those lines. I'm just here to provide you with some information. What we're doing is actually very, very cool and very progressive compared to the rest of the field that we are generally compared to.
Totally. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, again, if you need to reach out to Dave or myself, of course, give us a follow, EPMware on LinkedIn, give us a follow on OneStream, and please come check us out at Splash. Just want to give a quick shout out to Charlene, who's at OneStream and has really helped facilitate a lot of the conversations, between us and help get this partnership up and off the ground. So thank you so much. Folks, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out, epmware.com. We're happy to go into a deeper discussion. We're happy to also put together a proof of concept. It typically takes about 2 days to kind of grab your metadata and structure it and help you build a business case. So please reach out, and thank you, Dave, for joining us on this discussion, and for your time.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a great day. Have a great week. Bye.